14-year-old Marcus was scavenging through trash when he heard the faint cry from the snow-covered alley. A woman, collapsed, bleeding, left for dead. Hannah, 55, barely conscious. Marcus knew saving her meant risking everything. What he didn't know? She was Reaper's mother, a top Hells Angels member with 1,000 loyal brothers. When Reaper discovered the homeless kid who found Hannah fighting for her life in that frozen hell, one question burned through his mind. Was Marcus her savior? Or the one who put her there? The answer would either save Marcus's life or end it. Welcome to Hells Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will touch your heart in ways you won't expect. To my faithful subscribers who've been here from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just a story about survival on the streets. It's about a 14-year-old homeless boy who made one impossible choice in a frozen Chicago alley, a choice that saved a dying woman's life and set off a chain of events involving betrayal, brotherhood, and a battle that would change his life forever. Marcus's fingers were numb, but that wasn't why his hands were shaking. At 2 a.m. on a January night in Chicago's South Side, the cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was predatory. It hunted you through thin jackets and worn-out sneakers, stalking until your body surrendered. The wind cut through the alley like razors, carrying the smell of diesel exhaust and something darker, the metallic tang of Lake Michigan mixing with urban decay. 3 winters on the streets had taught Marcus that survival meant constant movement. So he kept digging through the dumpster behind Northwestern Memorial Hospital's research facility, searching for anything worth selling. His breath formed ghost clouds in the freezing air. Each exhale felt like losing precious warmth he couldn't afford to spare. But desperation had a way of making you ignore discomfort. Tonight's haul was pathetic. Some empty prescription bottles he might get $5 for, maybe a discarded medical textbook worth something to a pawn shop that didn't ask questions. That's when he heard it. A sound so faint it could have been wind scraping metal. But Marcus had learned to distinguish between the symphony of street noises, and this was different. This was human. He froze, listening. There it was again. A groan, weak and desperate, coming from the narrow alley between the main hospital building and the emergency services wing. Every instinct screamed at him to walk away. Getting involved meant questions, police reports, maybe social services dragging him back into the system he'd escaped. At 14, Marcus had already survived 2 foster homes that treated kids like inventory. The first one had bars on the windows. The second had a foster father with fists like hammers. He wasn't going back. But the sound came again, and this time it carried a word. Help. Marcus abandoned the dumpster and moved toward the alley, his heart rate accelerating. The streetlights barely penetrated the gap between buildings, but as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he saw her. A woman buried in a snowdrift, her designer coat soaked crimson, one arm extended like she'd been crawling toward the street before her body quit. Lady. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, his heart hammering against his ribs. Blood pooled beneath her head where a gash split her scalp, the wound still weeping fresh crimson into the white snow. Her lips had turned the color of frozen blueberries. 50-something, he guessed, with silver streaking through dark hair that clung to her face in icy clumps. Her skin felt like marble when he touched her wrist, searching for a pulse he could barely find. Her eyes opened, just barely, and locked onto his. There was something in that gaze, a fierce recognition that made Marcus's stomach twist. She wasn't just seeing him, she was memorizing him, as if she knew this moment would matter. She was trying to tell him something, her mouth forming words that wouldn't come. Her hand clutched a gold locket so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Marcus made his decision in half a heartbeat. He hooked his arms under hers and pulled, dragging her dead weight through the snow toward the service entrance 50 feet away. She was heavier than she looked, and every few feet he had to stop, gasping, his 14-year-old frame straining under the burden. His sneakers slipped on ice. His shoulders screamed in protest. But he kept moving because that's what survivors did. They kept moving. When he reached the door, he pounded with both fists, over and over until his hands went from numb to screaming with pain. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, a janitor appeared, a middle-aged man with tired eyes that went wide with shock at the scene. Marcus didn't wait for questions. He shoved past the man, yelling for doctors, for help, for anyone. The emergency room exploded into controlled chaos. Medical staff swarmed the woman. Hannah, he heard someone say after checking her wallet. Hypothermia, severe head trauma, internal bleeding, possible subdural hematoma. The words flew past Marcus as nurses hooked her to machines that beeped urgent warnings. For lines appeared. A crash cart stood ready. One doctor said something about another 10 minutes, and she'd have been gone. Another mentioned calling the police, filing a report. That's when reality crashed back in. A security guard approached Marcus, clipboard in hand, professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. Son, I need your name. Where are your parents? We need to contact them. Marcus saw the future in that question. Police, investigations, foster care, locked doors, social workers with fake concern and real power. He backed toward the exit, shaking his head. Wait, we need to. But Marcus was already gone, slipping through the automatic doors and vanishing into the Chicago night like smoke. If this stranger's life mattered enough to risk everything, doesn't your safety? Subscribe before the next twist hits. 3 days passed. 3 days of Marcus returning to his usual spots, under the Lake Street Bridge, behind the closed-down factory on West Harrison, anywhere the wind couldn't find him. 3 days of trying to forget the woman's face, the way her eyes had pleaded with him. 3 days of wondering if she'd survived, and whether saving her had been the biggest mistake of his life. He should have known nothing stays forgotten in Chicago. They came at dusk on the 4th day. Marcus was crouched near a steam vent outside an office building, rationing a half-eaten sandwich he'd fished from a cafe trash bin, when he heard them, the unmistakable thunder of motorcycle engines. Not 1 or 2 bikes. 15, maybe more. The sound built like an approaching storm. The sound grew closer, echoing off buildings until it felt like the entire city was vibrating. Marcus's survival instincts kicked in. He grabbed his backpack and started moving, but he wasn't fast enough. The bikes rounded the corner and formed a semicircle, blocking every escape route. 15 leather-clad riders sat motionless on gleaming Harleys, engines rumbling like caged beasts. Chrome glinted in the fading light. The smell of gasoline and engine oil filled the air. Then one rider dismounted. 6'3", shoulders broad as a linebacker's, with a gray-streaked beard and eyes that could cut steel. His leather vest bore patches that Marcus recognized even from the streets. Hell's Angels. Top rocker. Bottom rocker. Center patch. And on his chest, a name patch. Reaper. Reaper walked toward Marcus with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life. Each step was measured, deliberate, terrifying in its certainty. The other bikers remained mounted, silent sentinels watching the scene unfold. None of them moved. None of them had to. Marcus right. Reaper's voice was gravel and diesel fuel. Marcus's throat went dry. He didn't answer, calculating distances, angles, any possible way out. There wasn't one. Northwestern Memorial has a brand new security system. Reaper continued, stopping 10 feet away. Palantir AI facial recognition tech. Scans every face that enters the building, cross-references with databases, tracks movements. Uploaded your face the second you walked through those doors. He pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a crystal-clear screenshot of himself in the ER, face caught mid-yell as he called for help. Cost them $12 million to install. Worth every penny. Marcus's heart was a war drum now. The woman you saved? Reaper's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. That's Hannah, my mother. He stepped closer, and Marcus could smell leather and gasoline, and something sharper, rage, barely contained. Now I need you to tell me exactly what you saw that night. Every single detail. I I just found her. In the snow. She was dying. How'd she get there? Reaper cut him off. I don't know, Did you see anyone? Hear anything? Cars. Voices. Each question came faster, harder. Marcus's mind raced. He could lie, say he saw nothing, knew nothing. But something in Reaper's eyes told him lies would be a death sentence. And there was something else, something Marcus had buried for 3 days because acknowledging it meant wading into waters way over his head. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? You'll want to remember this moment. Marcus swallowed hard. I saw tire tracks, motorcycle tracks in the snow, leading away from where she was lying. Reaper went still. Completely, utterly still. Behind him, the other bikers shifted, engines revving slightly. The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Keep talking, Reaper said, his voice deadly quiet. And there was something else. When I first found her, before I pulled her out, I saw footprints. Boot prints. Heavy ones, like motorcycle boots. They led from where she was lying back toward the street, then disappeared. That's not enough to. Your mother wasn't alone in that alley, Marcus interrupted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. His voice shook, but he forced himself to continue, forced himself to meet Reaper's burning gaze. Someone was standing over her. I saw him for maybe 2 seconds before he took off on his bike. Tall, dark jacket. I couldn't see his face. Reaper took another step closer. The space between them vanished. What kind of jacket? Marcus's next words would either save his life or end it. Someone wearing your club's patch. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the motorcycle engines seemed to quiet. Reaper's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something terrifying and ancient that promised violence. Behind him, the other bikers went rigid. Hands moved toward waistbands. The air crackled with barely restrained fury. When Reaper finally spoke, his voice could have frozen blood. Get on the bike, kid. You're coming with me. The ride to Cicero felt like being swallowed by thunder. Marcus sat behind Reaper on the Harley, his thin jacket doing nothing against the wind that tore at him like claws. The vibration of the engine traveled through his entire body, rattling his teeth, making his bones ache. 15 bikes surrounded them in formation, their headlights cutting through the darkness like predator eyes hunting prey. No one spoke. The only language was engine roar and the occasional hand signal Reaper threw to the riders flanking them. Cryptic gestures Marcus couldn't decipher, but knew meant something deadly serious. Marcus's mind spiraled through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Where were they taking him? What would happen when they got there? He'd told Reaper the truth. Someone from the Hells Angels had left Hannah to die. That truth could get him killed, and Marcus knew it. But lying would have been faster. At least lies gave you a quick death. The truth? The truth made you useful first, then disposable. The cityscape shifted from downtown high-rises to industrial wastelands. Abandoned factories loomed like tombstones. Chain-link fences topped with razor wire-guarded empty lots. This was the Chicago tourists never saw, the Chicago that ate people whole and never spit them back out. The clubhouse appeared after 20 minutes of weaving through industrial neighborhoods, a low-slung building with barred windows and security cameras mounted on every corner. The structure looked like it had once been a warehouse, converted into something between a fortress and a sanctuary. The parking lot held maybe 40 motorcycles, all gleaming chrome and custom paint jobs worth more than most cars. A neon sign above the entrance showed a skull with wings, the red glow casting everything in a hellish light. Marcus had seen places like this from a distance, always knowing better than to get close. The bikes pulled in simultaneously, a choreographed arrival that spoke of military precision. Engines cut one by one until silence rushed back in, somehow more oppressive than the noise. Reaper dismounted and grabbed Marcus by the arm. Not rough, but firm enough to communicate there was no running. The pressure of his grip was a promise and a threat. The other bikers formed a loose circle around them, a mobile prison of leather and muscle. Marcus counted exits. There were 3, all blocked. Inside, Reaper said. The clubhouse interior smelled like cigarette smoke, spilled beer, and motor oil, a combination that burned Marcus's nostrils and made his eyes water. Pool tables occupied one corner. Green felt scarred with cigarette burns. A bar stretched along the back wall, bottles glinting under dim lights. Neon beer signs provided the only real illumination. But what caught Marcus's attention were the men, at least 30 of them, all wearing the Hells Angels patches, all turning to stare as Reaper walked in with a skinny homeless kid who looked like he weighed 90 pounds soaking wet. The conversations died. Pool cues froze mid-strike. Someone killed the jukebox, cutting off a Lynyrd Skynyrd song mid-chorus. The silence was suffocating. "That's the kid," someone muttered. "Reaper's lost his damn mind," another voice whispered. Reaper led Marcus through the main room toward a hallway at the back. Every step felt like walking a gauntlet. Marcus could feel the hostility radiating off these men like heat from a furnace. They weren't just suspicious. They were territorial, protective of their brotherhood, and he was an outsider who'd just accused one of them of attempted murder. The back room was windowless, a concrete box with a single metal table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. Interrogation room, Marcus realized. How many people had sat in this chair before him, and how many had walked back out? He sat when Reaper pointed, feeling every eye in the building burning through the walls. Reaper remained standing, arms crossed, his presence filling the room like a storm system. He pulled off his leather gloves slowly, methodically, then tossed them on the table. The gesture felt ritualistic, like preparing for something unpleasant. "You said you saw someone," Reaper began, his voice low enough that Marcus had to strain to hear. "I need you to describe everything. Height, build, anything on his jacket, his bike. Scars, tattoos, the way he moved. Think hard, kid. Details matter." Marcus closed his eyes, forcing himself back to that alley. The memory came in fragments. Blood on snow, the woman's labored breathing, the metallic smell of blood mixing with hospital antiseptic from nearby dumpsters. And yes, the figure. He'd only glimpsed him for maybe 2 seconds before the man mounted his bike and disappeared into the night. But fear had a way of burning details into your brain with perfect clarity. "Tall," Marcus said slowly, opening his eyes. "Maybe 6 foot or more. Heavy build, like he worked out. Not fat, solid. His jacket had your patches, full colors. But I saw something else when he turned to look back. A tattoo on his neck. A snake, definitely a snake, wrapped around from the side, the head coming up behind his ear." Reaper's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his beard. "What about the bike?" "Custom Harley. Dark blue, maybe black, hard to tell in that light. Chrome exhaust pipes, dual pipes. I remember because they caught the light from the street when he took off, reflected orange from the sodium lamps. A Softail, I think. The frame, the way it sat." Marcus trailed off, then added, "My dad used to ride before the accident. Before everything fell apart. Before the streets became home." Reaper pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos with deliberate slowness, then held it up. The screen showed a customized Harley Softail, midnight blue with chrome accents. "This bike." Marcus's stomach dropped. His hands started trembling. "Yeah, that's it. I'm absolutely sure. Those pipes, that paint job, that's the bike. If you're watching someone protect a kid, shouldn't you protect your feed? Like and subscribe." Reaper's expression went dark, a shadow passing over his face that made him look 10 years older. He pocketed the phone and stood there for a long moment, thinking, calculating. His fingers drummed once against the table, the only sign of agitation. Then he opened the door and called out, "Viper, Cade, Razor, get in here." Now, 3 men entered, filling the doorway before stepping inside. All massive, all dangerous looking in different ways. The first, Viper, had arms covered in sleeve tattoos depicting serpents and skulls, his face weathered by years of sun and violence. The second, Cade, wore a bandana and had cold, calculating eyes that assessed Marcus like he was merchandise. The third, slightly younger than the others but no less intimidating, had a snake tattoo curling up his neck, the head disappearing behind his right ear. Marcus's heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat. Time seemed to slow down. every detail sharpening into hyperclarity. Reaper studied Marcus's face, caught the recognition, the flash of terror Marcus couldn't hide fast enough. Which one? Marcus couldn't speak. His mouth had gone dry, tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. The man with the snake tattoo, Razor, stared at him with the intensity of someone memorizing a target, cataloging every feature for later. There was no warmth there, no humanity, just cold evaluation and the promise of retribution. Point at him, Reaper commanded, his voice harder now. But before Marcus could move, Viper stepped forward, his voice carrying across the small room. Hold on. You're trusting some street kid over your brothers? Over men who've bled beside you for 20 years? Who've taken bullets for you? His voice carried outrage, but underneath it, Marcus heard something else. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. The voice of someone protecting an investment. My mother was left to die in the snow, Reaper shot back, his voice steel wrapped in barely controlled fury. Someone here knows something. Someone here is lying. We all know Hannah was running her mouth, Cade said quietly, dangerously, taking a step closer to Reaper. Asking questions about club business she had no right asking. Poking around in financial records, asking about shipments. Maybe she finally asked the wrong person the wrong question. The temperature in the room plummeted. Reaper moved fast, faster than Marcus thought possible for a man his size. His hand was around Cade's throat, slamming him against the concrete wall with enough force to crack the paint. Say that again. I dare you. Tell me my mother deserved what happened to her. The other bikers erupted. Bodies filled the doorway within seconds. Voices rose in a chorus of anger and accusation. Half the room seemed ready to pull Reaper off Cade. The other half waited to see if Reaper would finish what he started. The tension was explosive, one spark away from total chaos. Everyone out. Reaper roared, releasing Cade, who gasped and clutched his throat. Now, all of you. They left slowly, reluctantly, muttering curses and threats under their breath. Even Viper, Cade, and Razor filed out, though Razor's eyes never left Marcus. It was a look that promised things worse than death, a look that said this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Betrayal hits when you least expect it. Don't miss what happens next. Like and subscribe now. When they were alone again, Reaper grabbed a burner phone from a drawer and tossed it to Marcus, who caught it clumsily. You don't go anywhere without this. You stay in the room I'm about to show you. You don't talk to anyone. You don't trust anyone. Not Viper, not Cade, not anyone who offers you food or friendship or a way out. Understand, why are you protecting me? Marcus asked, his voice smaller than he wanted, betraying the 14-year-old kid beneath the street-hardened survivor. Because you saved my mother's life when you could have walked away, Reaper said, and for the first time, his voice softened slightly. That means something in my world. Honor still matters to some of us. And because whoever tried to kill her is still out there, and you're the only witness. That makes you valuable and extremely vulnerable. He led Marcus to a small room at the back of the clubhouse, barely bigger than a closet. A cot with a thin mattress, a wool blanket, and a lock on the inside of the door. One small window barred. Sleep if you can. Lock this door. Don't open it for anyone but me. We'll figure this out in the morning. Reaper left, and Marcus heard the main door of the clubhouse lock with a heavy metallic click that echoed through the building. He was trapped, but at least he was alive. For now, he lay on the cot, still wearing his jacket, clutching the burner phone like a lifeline. The building had gone quiet except for occasional footsteps in the hallway and muffled conversations he couldn't decipher. Once, he heard raised voices, an argument that ended with something crashing. Sleep came in fragments, shallow and restless. Dreams mixed with reality. Hannah's face, blood on snow, motorcycle engines that sounded like growling animals stalking him through dark alleys. Somewhere around 3 a.m., exhaustion finally dragged him under into something resembling real sleep. He woke to cold air on his face. His eyes snapped open, adrenaline flooding his system instantly. The door to his room stood wide open, moonlight from the hallway spilling across the floor in a pale rectangle. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't opened that door. He'd locked it from the inside. He was absolutely certain of it. He remembered checking it twice, testing the handle. Then he saw it. Inches from his head, so close he could have been killed in his sleep. A hunting knife had been driven through his pillow, the blade buried so deep it punctured the thin mattress beneath and scraped concrete. A note was wrapped around the handle, secured with duct tape, the handwriting jagged and furious. Snitches don't survive. Marcus didn't scream when he saw the knife. 3 years on the streets had taught him that screaming only brought more danger. Screaming brought attention, and attention on the streets meant police, predators, or people who saw you as an easy mark. Instead, he rolled off the cot silently, hitting the floor in a crouch, his eyes scanning the dark room for threats. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his breathing stayed controlled, shallow, quiet, calculated. The door stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow him. The hallway beyond was empty, bathed in pale moonlight filtering through a window at the far end. But emptiness didn't mean safety. It meant whoever left the knife had already disappeared, melting back into the darkness like smoke. And that meant they could still be close, watching, waiting to see his reaction. Marcus's eyes fixed on the knife again. The blade was military-grade, serrated along one edge, the kind of weapon designed to cause maximum damage. It had been driven through his pillow with enough force to pierce the mattress and scrape the concrete floor beneath. Another 2 inches to the left, and it would have gone through his skull. The message was clear. This was a warning. Next time, it would be his throat. His hands trembled as he pulled the burner phone from his pocket and dialed the only number programmed into it. 2 rings. 3. Each second stretched into eternity. Then Reaper's voice cut through, rough with sleep but instantly alert. The voice of someone who'd woken to violence before. What happened? Someone was in my room, Marcus whispered, his voice cracking despite his best efforts to sound controlled. They left a knife. In my pillow. And a note. Silence on the other end. But Marcus could hear movement. Footsteps. A door opening. The metallic click of a weapon being checked. Read me the note. Marcus's hand shook as he unwrapped it from the knife handle. Snitches don't survive. More silence. Then, stay there. Don't move. Lock the door if you can. I'm coming. 2 minutes. It felt like 2 hours. Marcus pressed his back against the wall beside the door, clutching the knife he'd pulled from the pillow. If someone came back, he'd fight. He was 14 and weighed 90 pounds, but cornered animals fought hardest. He'd learned that lesson in his second foster home, when he put a man twice his size on the ground with a broken lamp and pure desperation. 90 seconds later, Marcus counted every one. Reaper burst through the doorway, fully dressed despite the 3 a.m. hour, a Glock 19 visible in his waistband and a second gun in his hand. He swept the room with professional efficiency, checking corners, the closet, under the bed. Then he took one look at the knife in Marcus's hand and the note on the floor, and his expression went from concerned to murderous. He pulled the note up, read it again carefully, then crumpled it in his fist hard enough that his knuckles turned white. Pack your things. Whatever you've got. We're leaving in 60 seconds. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't get to you, Reaper said, his voice deadly calm in the way that promised extreme violence to whoever had done this. Somewhere I should have taken you first. I underestimated how fast this would move. Marcus didn't have things to pack, just the clothes on his back and a backpack with a spare shirt and some stolen protein bars. But he grabbed them anyway, hands still shaking with adrenaline. 10 minutes later, Marcus was back on a motorcycle, this time with just Reaper. No formation, no backup, no protection detail. They left through a rear exit Marcus hadn't known existed, a narrow alley that led to a side street. They avoided the main clubhouse entirely, and Marcus understood why. Whoever left that knife was inside. Someone Reaper trusted, or used to trust, had just declared war. The streets were deserted at this hour, Chicago sleeping except for the predators who owned the darkness. Homeless veterans in doorways, dealers on corners, police cruisers prowling with dead eyes. They rode west, leaving the city behind, trading concrete canyons for suburban sprawl and then emptiness. Streetlights became sparse. Buildings gave way to fields. The darkness became absolute. The safe house was 40 minutes outside Chicago in Naperville, down a gravel road that Marcus would have missed if he'd been looking for it. The property was surrounded by empty fields and tree lines that stretched into blackness. Acres of isolation that worked both ways. No one could sneak up, but no one could hear you scream either. The house itself was small, a single-story ranch that had seen better decades. Peeling white paint exposed gray wood beneath. The porch sagged in the middle like a broken spine. Windows were dark except for a single light that burned in the kitchen. But it had something the clubhouse didn't: distance from the betrayal. An old man sat on the porch steps, smoking a cigarette despite the cold, breath and smoke mixing in the frozen air. He stood as they approached, unfolding to a height that made even Reaper look average. 6'5" easy, with shoulders that suggested a lifetime of hard labor or hard fighting. Probably both. His leather vest bore faded Hell's Angels patches, the colors worn soft by time and weather. His arms were covered in tattoos that had blurred with age into abstract art. Chains, Reaper said by way of introduction. Retired from the club 10 years ago. This is his place. You'll be safe here. Chains looked Marcus up and down with eyes that missed nothing. The too-thin frame, the haunted expression, the way Marcus's hand hovered near his pocket where he'd stashed the knife. Kid looks like he needs food more than protection. He needs both, Reaper replied. He turned to Marcus, and for the first time since they'd met, his expression softened slightly. I have to go back. Handle some things. Figure out who's trying to kill you, and my mother. Chains will keep you alive. Do exactly what he says. No arguments, no questions. Understood. Marcus nodded, unable to find words. Then Reaper was gone, his motorcycle engine fading into the distance until silence reclaimed the night, heavy and oppressive. Chains crushed out his cigarette under a boot heel and gestured toward the door. You hungry? Marcus nodded again, suddenly aware that he hadn't eaten in over 12 hours. His stomach felt like a knot pulled too tight. The kitchen was small but clean, surprisingly so for a bachelor's home. Chains moved with surprising grace for a man his size, pulling sandwich ingredients from a refrigerator covered in faded photographs. Younger men on motorcycles, barbecues, a woman with kind eyes who appeared in several photos, but none recent. As he assembled food, he talked, his voice rough, but not unkind. Been in the club 42 years, Chains said, sliding a plate across the table. Thick sandwich, chips, a glass of milk. Seen a lot of men come and go. Some died loyal. Some died traitors. You can usually tell which is which pretty early on, but sometimes the traitors are the ones who fool you longest. They're patient. They wait. They build trust for years before they burn it all down. Why'd you leave? Marcus asked between bites, the food almost painfully good after days of stress and starvation. Didn't leave. Retired. There's a difference. Chains sat down across from Marcus, his chair creaking under his weight. I earned my patch, earned my exit. Most don't get that luxury. Most leave in body bags or federal custody. He paused, studying Marcus with eyes that had seen too much. Reaper's a good man. One of the best I've known. But he's in a bad situation now. His mother crossed the club, you crossed the club. Blood doesn't change that for some people. In fact, it makes it worse. Makes you a traitor instead of just an enemy. What was she looking for? Hannah, I mean. Chains was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing over whether to answer. Finally, he spoke. Truth, probably. Hannah's always been sharp. Too sharp for her own good. She worked as the club's accountant for 15 years, kept the books clean, made sure the IRS didn't come sniffing around our legitimate businesses. Then about 6 months ago, she started asking questions. About shipments that didn't match inventory. Money coming in that didn't match the businesses we run. Cash appearing that couldn't be explained. She thought someone was using the club to move drugs, heroin, probably, coming up from Mexico through Texas. When family turns deadly, who can you trust? Like and subscribe, you'll need answers. Was she right? Marcus asked. Probably, Chains said flatly. And that's what got her killed. Almost killed. Whoever's running that operation has too much to lose. We're talking millions of dollars, federal trafficking charges, RICO statutes that could bring down the entire club. They'd kill 100 Hannahs to protect that. The next 2 days passed in tense quiet that felt like holding your breath underwater. Marcus stayed inside, watching through windows as Chains maintained the property with methodical precision, chopping wood, checking fences, working on motorcycles in the barn. At night, they ate together, and Chains told stories about the club's history, tales of brotherhood and betrayal, loyalty tested by violence and money. Marcus learned that the Hells Angels weren't just a motorcycle club. They were a kingdom with rules older than he was, and breaking those rules meant death. No trial, no appeal, just execution. On the third morning, the burner phone buzzed with a text from Reaper. Narrowed it down. 2 suspects. Viper or Cade. One of them tried to kill my mother. Investigating both. Trust no one. Marcus stared at the message, his stomach churning. Before he could respond, another text arrived, but this one was from an unknown number. No name, no caller ID, just digits. Ask Reaper about the Dearborn Street deal. He's lying to you. Marcus's blood ran cold. Dearborn Street. He didn't know what that meant, but the implication was clear. Reaper was hiding something. Something big enough that whoever sent this text wanted Marcus to know about it. Big enough to kill for. He found Chains in the barn, working on an old Harley engine spread across a workbench. What's the Dearborn Street deal? Chains froze, wrench suspended in midair. His face went pale, color draining like someone had opened a valve. Where did you hear that name? Someone texted me. Unknown number. Said Reaper's lying to me about it. Chains set down the wrench slowly, carefully, like it might explode if handled roughly. Kid, if someone's bringing up Dearborn Street, you're in deeper trouble than I thought. That deal almost destroyed the club 5 years ago. Brought in dirty money, federal heat, ATF investigations, internal warfare. Reaper was at the center of it. He made a deal with some people he shouldn't have trusted, brought money into the club that came from places we don't do business with. Cartels. Real cartels, not just street-level dealers. What does that have to do with Hannah? Everything, Chains said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Hannah was the one who discovered it. She's the reason the feds started investigating. And Reaper. The barn door exploded inward with a crash that sounded like thunder. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. Chains tackled Marcus to the ground, covering him with his massive body as bullets shredded the air above them. Wood splintered. Metal sparked. The motorcycle engine Chains had been working on exploded in a shower of oil and flame, heat washing over them in waves. Stay down, Chains roared, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. Survival isn't guaranteed. Make sure you see how this ends. Like and subscribe now. More gunfire. Chains pulled a Glock from his waistband and returned fire, his shots precise despite the chaos, each one calculated. Marcus pressed himself flat against the concrete floor, his ears ringing, his heart hammering so hard he thought his ribs might crack. He could smell gunpowder and burning oil and something else, blood. Then Chains made a sound, a wet, choking gasp that turned Marcus's blood to ice. The big man staggered backward, clutching his chest where blood bloomed across his shirt like a crimson flower spreading in fast motion. No! Marcus screamed. Chains collapsed beside him, his breathing ragged and shallow, each breath bubbling with blood. His gun clattered across the floor, just out of reach. Marcus grabbed for it, but boots thundered into the barn. 3 men, maybe 4, their faces covered with bandanas, assault rifles raised. A shadow fell across Marcus. He looked up to see a gun barrel pointed directly between his eyes, close enough to see the rifling inside. Then a voice he recognized said, "Don't. We need him alive." The barn door opened wider, and Cade stepped into the firelight, his cold eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Cade stepped over Chains' dying body like it was garbage on the sidewalk. The casual cruelty of it, the complete disregard for a man who'd given 42 years to the club, made something inside Marcus snap. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about monsters wearing brotherhood like a mask, using loyalty as a weapon while stabbing everyone in the back. "Take him," Cade ordered, gesturing toward Marcus with his gun. The barrel caught firelight from the burning barn, glinting orange and deadly. 2 of his men moved forward, Rifles trained on the 14-year-old who was frozen in shock beside Chain's massive, bleeding form. Their boots crunched on broken glass and spent shell casings. Marcus's hand found Chain's gun on the floor, fingers closing around grip still warm from the dead man's hand. He raised it, arms shaking violently, knowing he couldn't hit anything but refusing to die without fighting. But before Cade's men could reach Marcus, the barn's back wall exploded in a hail of gunfire. Wood shredded. Metal screamed. Cade's men scattered like roaches when the lights came on. Motorcycle engines roared to life outside. Not one, not two, but multiple bikes converging on the property with military precision. Reaper burst through the side door on foot, moving like violence incarnate, firing with both hands. One gun for each target. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Two of Cade's men went down immediately, bodies dropping before they could even turn. Blood sprayed across the barn's interior walls, mixing with motor oil and gasoline. "Move!" Reaper shouted at Marcus, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Marcus didn't think. Thinking got you killed. He ran, vaulting over the workbench as bullets chewed through the wood behind him, splinters exploding like shrapnel. His lungs burned. His legs felt like rubber. But he kept moving because Chains had died to give him these seconds, and he wouldn't waste them. Reaper grabbed his arm with bruising force and pulled him through the back exit into the freezing night. The cold hit like a physical blow after the heat of the burning barn. A Harley sat idling 20 feet away, headlight cutting through darkness like a searchlight, exhaust billowing white clouds in the frozen air. Behind them, Cade's voice roared with fury, raw and animalistic. "Find them. I want that kid alive. Anyone who lets him escape dies." Marcus and Reaper hit the motorcycle together. The engine screamed as Reaper opened the throttle, RPMs redlining. Tires spat gravel and mud in a rooster tail. Gunfire erupted again, muzzle flashes lighting up the night like strobe lights. Bullets whined past their heads like angry hornets. One so close Marcus felt the displacement of air against his cheek. The rear tire fishtailed wildly, then caught traction, and they launched forward into the darkness of the rural road. Marcus looked back once. Just once. Chains lay motionless in the burning barn, flames spreading across the oil-soaked floor, consuming everything. The big man who'd fed him, protected him, told him stories about loyalty and brotherhood, dead because Marcus had been there. Another person destroyed by his existence. The guilt felt like broken glass in his chest. They rode hard for 30 minutes, taking back roads and farm paths that probably didn't appear on any GPS. No headlight now, just moonlight and instinct guiding them through a landscape of empty fields and skeletal trees. Reaper drove like he knew every pothole, every turn, every escape route, muscle memory from years of running from trouble. Finally, Reaper pulled into an abandoned grain silo complex, a monument to agricultural decline. Rusted metal towers reached toward the sky like fingers of dead giants. The motorcycle's engine cut, and silence rushed in to fill the void, broken only by their ragged breathing and the ticking of cooling metal. "Chains?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. He needed to hear it anyway. "Gone," Reaper said flatly, the word carrying the weight of another death, another betrayal. He dismounted, paced like a caged animal, his hands shaking with adrenaline or rage or both. Cade knew exactly where you were. The location was need to know. Someone told him. Someone I trust. Someone close. Or someone you trusted told you to take me there. Marcus said quietly, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Reaper stopped pacing. Turned slowly, mechanically. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus pulled out the burner phone with trembling fingers, showed him the text message about Dearborn Street. The words glowed in the darkness like an accusation. "Explain this. Explain why someone's telling me you're lying." Reaper's face went dark, shadows deepening the lines around his eyes and mouth. For a moment, a terrible, frozen moment, Marcus thought he might lash out, might hit him, or worse. The big man's fists clenched. His jaw worked. Violence radiated from him like heat. Instead, Reaper deflated like someone had opened a valve and let out all the fight. He suddenly looked 10 years older, shoulders sagging under invisible weight. He sat down heavily on a concrete barrier, head in his hands, and the silence stretched until Marcus thought it might snap. You want the truth? Reaper's voice was hollow, scraped raw. Fine. 5 years ago, I made a deal. The club needed money. Legitimate fronts were failing. IRS was circling like sharks. We were bleeding cash. Some people approached me with an offer. Cash, lots of it, in exchange for moving product through our territories. Protection, distribution networks, legitimacy. I said yes. Drugs, Marcus said, the word simple but damning. Heroin. Mexican cartels wanted our connections, our reach, our legitimacy as cover. I brought it to a vote with the leadership. It passed. We took the money. For 2 years, everything was good. We expanded, bought businesses, cleaned the money through car washes and restaurants and tattoo parlors. Then my mother started asking questions. Marcus felt his stomach twist into knots. What kind of questions? Where the money was really coming from. She knew the math didn't work. She's too smart, too thorough. She started digging, found the connections to the cartels, realized what I'd done. Reaper looked up, and his eyes were haunted, hollow. She threatened to go to the feds. Said she'd bring down the whole operation, turn state's evidence, testify in federal court if I didn't end it immediately. She was going to destroy the club to save it. Destroy me to save my soul. When the hero might be the villain, do you keep watching? Like and subscribe. So you killed her, Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper, each word feeling like a betrayal of the man who'd protected him. No. Reaper stood abruptly, the denial explosive. I would never. She's my mother. I love her. I ended the deal. Cut ties with the cartels completely. Lost millions. Made dangerous enemies. The kind who kill your family to make a point. But I ended it because she asked me to. Because she was right. Then who left her to die in that alley? Someone who didn't want the deal to end, Reaper said, pacing again. Someone who was making too much money to walk away. I thought it was Cade or Viper, but I couldn't figure out which one. Or maybe both. Trust becomes impossible when everyone's lying. Headlights cut through the darkness like knives, approaching fast from the east. Not one vehicle, multiple. Motorcycles, at least a dozen, maybe more. The rumble of engines built like distant thunder growing closer. Marcus and Reaper both tensed, hands moving toward weapons, but Reaper held up his other hand. Wait, he said, something in his posture shifting from defensive to uncertain. The bikes surrounded them in a loose circle, engines rumbling like contained thunder, headlights creating a ring of illumination that felt like an arena. But these weren't Cade's men. The patches were different, the bikes older, the riders less tactical and more traditional. The lead rider removed his helmet with deliberate slowness, revealing a weathered face Marcus recognized from the clubhouse. Viper. Don't shoot. Viper called out, hands visible and empty, palms forward in the universal gesture of peace. I'm here to help. Help. Reaper's gun was already drawn, aimed center mass at Viper's chest. Why the hell should I trust you? Give me one reason I shouldn't put you down right now. Because I've been trying to protect you this whole time, Viper said, dismounting slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Cade's been running his own operation for 3 years. Separate from yours. Deeper connections, bigger money. He never stopped dealing with the cartels. He just went around you, used your old contacts, built his own pipeline. When Hannah figured it out, started tracing money that didn't match any club business, he tried to kill her to keep her quiet. Why frame me? Reaper demanded, the gun still steady. Because you were in his way. If he could make it look like you killed Hannah, your own mother, the club would turn on you. They'd execute you for breaking the most sacred rule. He'd take over leadership, expand the operation, make millions while you rotted in the ground. You, your mother, this kid. You're all just obstacles to be removed. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together like a puzzle revealing a nightmare. The text message. The one about Dearborn Street. Cade sent that to make me distrust Reaper. To isolate him. Smart kid. Viper said, something like approval in his voice. Cade's been playing both sides, feeding information to everyone, manipulating communications, watching you tear each other apart while he positions himself to take everything. Before anyone could respond, more headlights appeared from the west, vehicles this time, not motorcycles. Black SUVs, at least 4 of them, moving with military precision and tactical spacing. They boxed in the entire group, high beams blinding, creating a wall of light. Doors opened in unison. Armed men emerged like a professional security force, tactical gear, body armor, assault rifles with extended magazines. Not police, not feds. Private contractors, mercenaries, the kind of men who killed for money and slept soundly after. And leading them, walking forward with the confidence of someone who controlled every variable, was Cade. His smile was that of a wolf who'd cornered his prey. Reaper. Cade's voice echoed across the empty grain facility, bouncing off metal silos. Glad you could all make it. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down separately. I appreciate efficiency. 12 armed men fanned out with professional precision, creating a perimeter with overlapping fields of fire. Reaper's group was outnumbered 2-1, outgunned by military-grade weapons, and trapped in an open space with no cover. Cade walked forward casually, confident in his absolute control of the situation. This is where loyalty dies. Don't miss the end. Like and subscribe now. Here's how this works, Cade said, stopping 20 feet away, close enough to be heard clearly, but far enough that Reaper couldn't rush him. The club thinks you killed Hannah. I have witnesses who'll swear they saw you leaving the alley that night. I have evidence, forensics, digital footprints, everything I need. But I'm feeling generous tonight. Hand over the kid, the witness who could complicate my story, and walk away. I'll tell the club it was all a misunderstanding. You retire, disappear to some beach in Mexico, live out your days somewhere quiet and forgotten. And if I refuse? Reaper asked, though they both knew the answer. Then I kill you, kill the kid, kill Viper and everyone loyal to you. And I take over the club anyway. Bodies disappear. Stories change. History gets rewritten. Cade's smile widened, showing teeth. Accept your way. You die knowing you failed your mother, betrayed your brothers, and got a 14-year-old kid executed for trying to do the right thing. Your legacy becomes that of a child killer. He paused, letting that sink in. Your choice, Reaper. The silence was suffocating, pressing down like physical weight. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat hammering in his ears, feel every eye on him. He was the price of Reaper's survival, the bargaining chip that could end this standoff. For a moment, a terrible, tempting moment, he almost told Reaper to take the deal. What was his life worth compared to all these men? He was just a homeless kid. They were warriors, brothers, legends. Cade pulled out his phone with theatrical slowness. Check the time. You've got 10 seconds to decide. 10, 9, 8. Reaper looked at Marcus, something unreadable passing across his face. Calculation, regret, determination. Then he looked at Viper, at the men who'd ridden through the night to stand with him. Then back at Cade, and Marcus saw the decision crystallize. 7, 6, 5. Reaper's hand moved toward his gun, fingers spreading. 4, 3. Marcus closed his eyes, preparing for the end, for bullets and blood and darkness. 2, 1. I've got a better idea. A woman's voice cut through the countdown like a blade, strong and clear and achingly familiar. Everyone turned. From the shadows behind Cade's vehicles, a figure emerged into the light. Silver-streaked dark hair, designer coat, a bandage still visible on her forehead where stitches held flesh together. Hannah walked into the light, very much alive, and behind her came a force that made Cade's 12 men look like children playing soldier. 1,000 headlights igniting the darkness simultaneously as Hell's Angels bikers flooded the grain facility from every direction, a tsunami of chrome and leather and righteous fury. Cade's face went from triumphant to terrified in the space of a heartbeat. The grain facility transformed into an arena of judgment as 1,000 motorcycles surrounded the complex, their engines creating a sound like the earth itself was splitting open. Every direction Marcus looked, he saw headlights, leather vests, and the unmistakable patches of the Hells Angels. They'd come from Chicago, from surrounding states, from chapters across the entire Midwest. This wasn't just backup. This was the entire Brotherhood answering a call. Hannah walked forward with the confidence of someone who'd orchestrated everything from a hospital bed. The bandage on her head was stark white against her silver-streaked hair, a visible reminder of how close she'd come to death. But her eyes were sharp, focused, alive with righteous fury. "Hello, Cade," she said, her voice carrying across the distance with crystalline clarity. "Surprised to see me breathing?" Cade's mercenaries shifted nervously, their tactical advantage evaporating as they realized they were outnumbered almost 100-1. Even professional killers understood basic math. Their rifles lowered slightly, fingers moving away from triggers. Survival instinct overrode whatever Cade was paying them. "Hannah," Cade managed, his voice strangled. "This isn't. I can explain." "Explain?" Hannah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Explain how you left me to die in that alley? Explain how you've been running heroin through the club for 3 years? Or maybe explain how you were about to execute my son and a 14-year-old boy to cover your crimes." From behind Hannah, more figures emerged. Federal agents, their FBI windbreakers visible even in the darkness. At least 20 of them, surrounding Cade's position with weapons drawn. The lead agent stepped forward, a woman in her 40s with gray hair, pulled back severely. "Cade Morrison," she announced, her voice official and final. "FBI. You're under arrest for drug trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, and about 15 other federal charges we'll discuss downtown." Cade's mercenaries dropped their weapons immediately. No amount of money was worth federal charges. They raised their hands, backing away from their employer like he carried a plague. Cade stood alone, isolated, his empire crumbling in real time. "You wore a wire," Cade said, looking at Hannah with something like respect mixed with hatred. "You've been working with the feds this whole time." "For 6 months, Hannah confirmed. "Ever since I discovered your operation. I gathered evidence, recorded conversations, traced money through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands." "You got sloppy, Cade. Greedy. You thought the club's loyalty would protect you, but loyalty only extends to people who honor it." 2 federal agents moved in, cuffing Cade roughly. He didn't resist, but his eyes found Marcus across the distance one last time. There was rage there, and hatred, but also something else, defeat. Complete and absolute defeat. "The kid," Cade said as they dragged him toward a waiting vehicle. "All of this because some homeless kid decided to play hero." "No," Marcus said, finding his voice stronger than he expected. "All of this because you betrayed your brothers. I just refused to let you get away with it." Cade was shoved into a vehicle, and the door slammed with finality. The FBI agents followed, along with the mercenaries who'd clearly decided cooperation was their best option. Within minutes, the federal convoy disappeared into the night, taking Cade and his operation with them. Heroes are made in moments like this. Make sure you're here for them. Like and subscribe. The assembled bikers erupted in cheers, engines revving in celebration that shook the ground. The sound was deafening, primal, a release of tension that had been building for days. Hannah walked to Reaper, and for a moment, mother and son just looked at each other. Then she slapped him, hard enough that the sound cut through even the engine noise. Reaper took it without flinching. "That's for making the Dearborn Street deal in the first place," Hannah said, her voice thick with emotion. Then she pulled him into a fierce embrace. "And this is for ending it when I asked. For choosing right over easy. For protecting this boy when it would have been simpler to throw him away." Viper stepped forward, followed by dozens of other club members. They formed a circle around Reaper, Hannah, and Marcus, a gesture Marcus didn't understand until Viper spoke. "The club's voting right here, right now," Viper announced. "New leadership, new direction. Cade's people are out. The drug connections, the cartel money, it ends tonight. All in favor of Reaper remaining as our leader, under the condition that we return to the code we swore to uphold. Say aye." The response was thunderous. "Aye." 1,000 voices speaking as one. And all in favor of this kid, Marcus, being named an honorary brother of the Hells Angels, under our protection for life. Say aye. Again, the roar of affirmation shook the night. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes, unable to process what he was hearing. Honorary brother. Protected for life. Words that meant he'd never be alone again, never be hunted, never be abandoned. Hannah turned to Marcus, and her expression transformed into something soft, maternal. You saved my life when you didn't have to. You risked everything for a stranger bleeding in the snow. That's not just courage, Marcus. That's character. That's who you are at your core. I didn't think about it, Marcus said, his voice cracking. You needed help. Exactly, Hannah said, placing her hands on his shoulders. You didn't think. You just acted. Because helping people is instinct for you, even after everything you've survived. Don't ever lose that. Reaper knelt down so he was eye level with Marcus, the gesture deliberate and meaningful. You've got a home now, kid. Real one. With me and Hannah. We'll get you enrolled in school, get you everything you need. You'll have your own room, stability, people who care about you. No more streets. No more cold nights. No more wondering if you'll survive till morning. This is what redemption looks like. Don't let stories like this pass you by. Like and subscribe. Marcus looked at Hannah, then at Reaper, then at the hundreds of bikers surrounding them, men and women who dropped everything to answer a call for justice. He thought about Chains, who died protecting him. He thought about the frozen alley where this had all started, where a split-second decision to help a dying woman had changed everything. Why me? Marcus whispered. You're just a kid who did the right thing when it mattered most, Reaper interrupted. That makes you exactly the kind of person we need in this world. So yes, you're family now, if you'll have us. Marcus nodded, unable to speak through the tears streaming down his face. Hannah pulled him into a hug that felt like every good thing he'd forgotten existed. Warmth, safety, belonging, home. Around them, the bikers started their engines in sequence, a rolling thunder of celebration. They formed a convoy, and Marcus rode with Reaper and Hannah back toward Chicago as dawn began breaking over the horizon. The darkness that had defined his life for 3 years was finally giving way to light. 6 months later, Marcus walked out of Lincoln Park High School carrying a report card with mostly B's and 1A in English. His backpack was heavy with textbooks, and his shoes were new enough that they still squeaked slightly. He looked like any other 15-year-old heading home after school, which was exactly the point. Hannah was waiting in her car, engine running. She smiled when she saw him, the genuine smile of someone who'd found unexpected joy in motherhood the second time around. How'd the math test go? She asked as he climbed in. Passed, Marcus said, allowing himself a small smile. Barely, but I passed. That's my boy, Hannah said, and those words, my boy, still sent warmth through his chest every time. They drove to the house in Oak Park, the 3-bedroom home Hannah had bought specifically so Marcus would have his own space. Reaper's motorcycle was already in the driveway. Inside, the smell of dinner cooking filled the air, something that still amazed Marcus, the simple act of coming home to hot food prepared by people who cared. That evening, after dinner, the 3 of them sat in the living room. Reaper nursed a beer while Hannah worked on her laptop, managing the club's legitimate accounting, cleaned up now, transparent, legal. Marcus did homework on the couch, struggling through algebra but refusing to give up. Marcus, Reaper said suddenly. Look at me. Marcus looked up, concerned by the serious tone. 6 months ago, you were surviving on the streets. Today, you're sitting in a warm house, doing homework, planning for a future. You did that. Not me, not Hannah. You. By making one impossible choice in a frozen alley to save someone you didn't know. That choice saved my mother, exposed corruption, reformed an entire organization, and changed your life. Never forget that your choices matter. That you matter. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I just did what anyone would do. No, Hannah said gently, looking up from her laptop. You did what almost no one would do. And that's why you're here. That's why you're ours. Later that night, Marcus lay in his bed, his actual bed with clean sheets and a door that locked from the inside if he wanted, though he never did anymore. He thought about Chains, about that night in the barn, about the price of doing the right thing. The old man had died protecting him, and Marcus had vowed never to waste that sacrifice. He thought about Cade, serving life in federal prison without possibility of parole, about the club, reformed, and rebuilt on principles instead of profit. About second chances and unlikely families. His phone buzzed. A text from Reaper. Proud of you, kid. Sleep well. Marcus smiled in the darkness and texted back. Thanks, Dad. He'd never called Reaper that before. Hadn't been sure if it was allowed, if it was too much, if it would make things weird. But the response came immediately. That's the first time you've called me that. Don't let it be the last. Marcus set the phone down and closed his eyes. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Safe, peaceful, boring in the best possible way. No sirens, no threats, no wondering if he'd survive the night. Just home. He'd saved a Hell's Angel's sister in the snow. And in return, 1,000 bikers had changed his life. But really, Marcus had changed his own life the moment he decided that someone else's survival mattered more than his safety. That was the real story. Not the violence, not the betrayal, not the dramatic rescue. The real story was that a homeless boy chose kindness in a frozen Chicago alley, and kindness chose him back.